Wisconsin versus Lori Phillips, La Crosse County case number 20CF364. Verdict: we, the jury, find the defendant, Lori Phillips, not guilty. Signed by the juror foreperson, dated this 10th day of November 2023.
I want to welcome in a very special guest now. He is Mark Phillips' brother, Todd. Todd, good morning to you. Thank you so much for coming on. You have talked to Court TV prior to the trial, but this is the first time that we're speaking with you since the verdict. First of all, your reaction to it, please, Todd.
Obviously not the verdict we're looking for. I can just absolutely state that when Lori took the stand and swears to tell the truth, the whole truth, many of us in the courtroom could tell that there was multiple lies from her story and the night of the events. They just don't match up for us.
Tell us specifically what you think she might have been lying about.
A few things are, she states that he jumped over the seat, this diamond earring that she talks about, that he jumped over the console and was able to somehow push her head into the middle. Mark's a big fella, 220 pounds, and she's not small either. There's several other things that we noticed, bruises on her that she took pictures of apparently the next day, and I'm not sure why the state didn't bring that up. If you got attacked the night before, you're not going to have those kind of bruises already the next morning. There just seemed like this was a abuse trial. Although everything that was stated about the abuse that he so-called did, there's only one time that the police were called, and that was the time that actually my parents were with my brother, and they asked her to leave the house and she wouldn't leave. Just things of like the hotels. She searched hotels and she couldn't find a place to stay. Well, I did a hotel search and there's 35 hotels in this area. I think I could probably go on for an hour of the random things that she has stated. She mentioned a couple of times about guns, that he had a gun, but then he didn't. You know, I thought he had a gun this time, but he didn't. It just seems like there were so many things that she elaborated on that no one ever saw. This abuse that she recalls, even her friend Hannah Clancy didn't witness this. It was all her just hearsay.
Mm-hmm. Let's go back to some of her time on the stand when she's talking about being abused. She says at the hands of Mark.
Did Mark ever escalate the abuse from verbal to something else?
To physical?
Yes.
Yes.
Could you describe that for us, please?
I mean, specific instances or what?
Well, just generally speaking, what do you mean by the abuse turning physical?
So, I mean, he's pushed me before. He's choked me numerous times.
Todd, did you ever hear anything about that?
So it's something the judge wouldn't bring up. They wouldn't let the state attorneys go back any further than, I think he said, like a year, because he didn't want, for whatever reason, I'm not sure why the judge wouldn't let some of that stuff in there. We've never heard any abuse. Actually, the abuse was the other way around. Mark was married for over 20 years with the mother of his children.
Nancy,
she
right?
was actually, yes, and Nancy was in the courtroom and stated, several times during this, like, Mark wouldn't have done that. Mark's never touched me. Lori, his ex-husband, I talked to him after this all had happened, and he had stated that she had tried to run him over at one time, and that it's just, the abuse wasn't one-sided, but of course, he can't tell his story. So it's all her story.
Wait, you spoke, let me just back up for a second. You spoke to Lori's ex-husband who said that she tried to run him over on a prior occasion.
Yes. Yes. And he didn't want to take the stand, and some of the stuff the judge wouldn't allow because it has been so, a few years ago.
So prosecutors knew about it? Were they aware of this?
They knew about it.
They knew?
Yes.
They just couldn't get it into evidence?
They couldn't get into evidence because it seemed the judge wouldn't allow so many things on our side, but allowed anything for her side.
It had to be hard to sit there and watch, because of course, your hearts are broken with the loss of your brother, and our hearts certainly go out to you, Todd. They really do. I know with every day that passes, it doesn't get any easier. It's an awful thing. When you're sitting in the courtroom and watching it, and you were there every single day, was there ever any moment where there was any interaction from her to you or anyone else in your family, anything, any bit of, if it was an accident, and she didn't know that he was out in the snow and didn't realize that she hit him and all of that, was there any remorse ever shown at any point?
She maybe had 2 tears while she was on the stand. Other than that, it was like a happy-go-lucky. She was smiling half the time. Even when she's telling her story of him coming out of the house with his fist raised, she didn't really show any emotion. And if you've seen any of the trial, you can see where the truck was parked. So she states that he comes out of the house, fist raised, running after her. Well, that is one step. So if he came out of the house, fist raised, like her door would have been right there. Yet she said something clicked and he went around the side of the truck to grab some stuff out. And if you've seen that, there was a whole bunch of stuff on the passenger seat. And then all of a sudden he got mad again. It's just, people don't react that way. And the state, I think, just did a horrible job of putting things together. One big thing is the initial assistant DA, who had this case for over 4.5 years, then was too busy, too much of on her plate, that she turned it over to these 2, which had less than a month, maybe a month, to prepare for all this. So I don't want to say anything negative on them. They did the best they could do, but their hands were kind of tied from the beginning.
Well, and we know it was the jury who made the decision. We know the state certainly did try, and we know that there were some pieces of evidence that were quite tricky, one piece of evidence that might have been very favorable to Lori was that 911 call, where she really appears on the call to not know that Mark was out there all night. Todd, if you could say anything to the jury or ask the jury any questions right now about the case, about what evidence convinced them, what would you ask them? What would you want to say to them?
So all of the domestic violence, if you throw all that away, the night she says, the incident, if the truck was parked right behind the house, or right on that pad that they talked about, I kind of stepped it out last night. It's about 50 feet to where he was laying. So if he had come around the vehicle, like she stated, and she took off, even if she kind of clipped him, even if she sort of hit him, there's no possible way for him to get around the corner and halfway down the driveway 50 feet away. It's just, so obviously her story, something else happened. Mm-hmm. And as I stated before, if you run over a rabbit or a squirrel, there's not a possible chance that you hit a 220-pound human and don't know it. I would love to hear some explanation on what they think actually happened.